All right, gentlemen, welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. How you both doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for having us out.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys. And it's usually this podcast is just one person at a time. I love having groups on because typically they've hunted together and typically they can call a little bit of, I don't think that's exactly how that story happened. So I'm excited to talk with you guys today. But beyond just having both of you here, I also love what you guys do. Your product is super cool. So let's start with this. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? And then either one of you can introduce to Drifter Hydration. So, Joe, you arrive first, so you get to go first. That's how we're gonna go here.
Yeah, Joe Gauvain, one of the co-founders of Drifter Hydration. It's just Ross and myself. So basically, like my role is with it is I did most of the designing on the system, and I do most of our marketing stuff. But grew up in way north California. Grew up in the outdoors my whole life. Partially off grid. Actually, pretty much mostly off grid. But yeah, I grew up doing a lot of fishing. Fishing was my first love with my dad. My dad wasn't much of a big hunter. He was he killed deer because we needed meat, not so much, not at all for sport actually. So that was kind of my introduction into hunting, was you killed out of necessity, not for fun. But yeah, lots of fishing, and then I joined the Coast Guard at 18. Ended up going to Nebraska first unit, and then the Middle East, and then did a couple tours in California, one in Alaska, and then now I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina, and I can't wait to get back out west because I miss the mountains so dang much. And this heat and the swamp just isn't for me. And it's not a bash to the people that are here. I'm not built for this heat and this flat country. I need mountains in my life for sure.
100%. My wife and I did the same thing. We moved somewhere hot and humid, and we were like, nope, that ain't for us. We got to get back to Colorado. So I understand that entirely, Joe.
Yep. So I moved back next year. Looking forward to getting back out there. So hopefully somewhere on the Oregon coast to finish up my career, and then hopefully by then we can scale Drifter into something big enough that me and Ross can. Ross is pretty much doing it full time. I'm not quite full time on it.
Okay.
Still full time in the Coast Guard. So 5 years, and we can both just grow this into what we want to make it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Joe. Ross, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, how long you've been hunting, and anything you want to add about Drifter.
Yeah, so my name's Ross Ellis. I grew up in Southern Oregon. I've hunted pretty much my entire life. I came from a family where that was kind of our main pastime. I mean, all of the kids, we all played sports and everything, but the primary thing that we did as a family, with dad and uncles and cousins and brother and everybody that we could get, we did a lot of hunting. The main thing that we hunted deer and elk, but elk was really what we, grew up as our real family tradition. So, every year since I was a kid, we'd elk hunt. I started going when I was 9. That's when Dad thought I was old enough to tag along with him. And then when I was 12 in Oregon, that's when you're allowed to carry a tag for yourself. And so that was my first year carrying a rifle. And I actually had an opportunity my very first year, my very first sit ever, elk hunting with a rifle in my hand. I had an opportunity at a small spike, and it was the first time Dad had ever sat me separate from the group. And I was sitting by myself, and I got so nervous I chickened out, and I pulled the rifle up. I looked at it through the scope, and I just sat there and stared at him and let him walk off. I was afraid. I don't know what I was scared of. I was 12, and I chickened out, and I ended up not killing that bull. But yeah, I grew up doing a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing. I've lived all over the country. My time in the Coast Guard, I spent 8 years in the Coast Guard. That's where Joe and I met, and spent a lot of time traveling around with that. I've done kind of, seems like everything under the sun. I worked for the state as a parole investigator for a little while after I got out of the Coast Guard. I'm currently a contract corporate pilot and flight instructor, and when I'm not running Drifter stuff. But primarily my job with Drifter is I do the logistics and the business development stuff, and I do all the order fulfillment myself. It's just Joe and I that run the company. We don't have any employees, so every time somebody's got a question, it's one of the two of us that answers it. And every time somebody puts in an order, I'm the one that packages it up and sends it out. So that's pretty much my role within the company. And
cool.
And yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys this. So obviously it's a water filtration product. I guess I want to start with the story of where did you two put your heads together and go, this is what we're going to do? Like, because it's very interesting to me, and your product's very cool. I went on like I think it was like 18-mile round trip backpack hike recently, and I had way too much water on me, and I was like, God, I need a system where I can grab water on the way, so I don't need to carry 4 liters with me. I need something where I can do a liter at a time, save the weight, and I keep coming back to your product. So I want to hear more about kind of where that started, and then we'll get into the hunting stories because that's why people are really here. But I'm curious, so personally, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, so I guess I'll say my piece first, and if Ross, if you have anything to add, feel free. But early on in my backpacking and hunting journey, it was trying camelbacks and stuff like that, and I ended up throwing them away because I just had too many fails, and also hated. You pull that thing; it doesn't matter how long you had it. The water always tastes like junk, and when it was real hot, hunting Northern California, A zone, B zones, it gets really hot, really dry. You go through a lot of water. And it was just leaving this awful taste in my mouth, and I just couldn't do it. So I just did water bottles for years. So I was doing Nalgene, and I'll just buy a case of water and throw like 6 in my pack, and then just running whatever filter I had. Most of the time, it's just a Sawyer squeeze, and ended up going through a lot of bags on that. Usually ended up resorting to their little 16-ounce bag because that was the only one that seemed to never really break.
Okay.
And then me and Ross were deer hunting together in Oklahoma. I think it was the second year he was in Oklahoma, like 2017. Was that second or third year, something like that? And we were talking about water, and we're like, man, there's not a very efficient way to hydrate, in the woods, hiking, backcountry hunting, all that. And it's like, that's the most important thing out there. It all starts with hydration. If you're not hydrated in the mountains, your judgment goes out, your physical ability, everything fails if you're not hydrated. One way or another, it eventually fails. And we're like, man, we gotta come up with something. We're like, so we started just writing down all these ideas of all the problems that we hated with current hydration and filtration systems. And then we tried to come up with a solution for every single one of those. And when you're trying to come up with a solution for all these problems, there's going to be give and take and compromise in certain areas. And what we came up with was a rigid reservoir. We wanted it pressurized so you can fill, cook stoves and stuff, because nothing more pain in the ass when you're trying to fill a water bottle for electrolytes or energy sups, or trying to fill your jet boil in the tent. You're dropping an elbow on it. You're trying to hold it up high, or blow, like all that stuff that everybody does. And we're like, all right, simple. Let's just put a pressure pump on an air pump, good to go. And then it kind of took off from there. We sat on the idea for 4, well, it was over that actually, because I was 17 and we didn't start actively trying again until 22. So 5 years. We just didn't know where to start. I mean, neither one of us had any business experience at all. No product development experience. Like, I'm a mechanic by trade in the Coast Guard. I wear a lot of different hats with that, and I've done a lot of fabrication and stuff like that. So building things isn't foreign to me. And designing things isn't necessarily foreign, but like designing a product to sell retail, we thought we had to patent it first. So we just said, screw it, let's figure this out. And we started calling tons of manufacturers, and lots of no's, and, lots of people telling us we couldn't make it out of the materials we wanted. And so we ended up landing on our manufacturer, and they're based out of Bend, Oregon, and they've been really awesome to work with. So then working with them, we realized that we could do pretty much everything through them, which was really cool, because we initially found them because we were like, do we buy machines and build it ourselves? Do we buy bits and pieces? We're trying to piece this whole thing together with different manufacturers. So it was actually a really big relief when we found them. And, we tried to initially go with a certain type of plastic, found out that didn't work. So we did a lot of prototyping, a lot of testing. We had to adjust our designs from where the tubes were going in, ended up landing on the design we have now, obviously. And then we're like, well, we need to bring a complete system to market, not just a hydration system. So we're not having to, hodgepodge all sorts of bits and pieces together. Yeah. So that's where we designed just a very simple filtration bag. We branded an OEM filter that they already had. The filter element is put together by a company down in Florida. And we brought this complete all things hydration system to market, including a mini bottle. And the reason we went with the size that we did is most supplements call for 8 to 14 ounces of water. So we made a 16 ounce total capacity water bottle, fits in bear spray holsters, and it's great for morning protein, energy, and hydration supplements. And since the system's pressurized, it's easy to refill, and you don't have to carry a 32 or a 48-ounce bottle on your hip that pops out on things every time you sit down and sloshes around and all that stuff. So we pretty much tried to, like I said, think of every single issue we've ever had with hydration in backcountry and come up with a solution. And that's how we landed on a pressurized rigid reservoir that has internal and external backfeed filtration ability.
That's awesome. Ross, you want to add anything? That was pretty thorough.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else to add.
I thought I was the one of the group that talked a lot, but I guess Joe might be taking that over. So, no, it all, it all started with a sketch, and you know, I'd always wanted to kind of design something and you know, be a business owner, but I didn't really know how to do it, and you know, I didn't really believe. At first, I was a little bit skeptical that we were even going to be able to do this thing, and then just over time, we finally said, you know what, let's do it. Let's take the leap and do it. And so far, it's been successful, and feedback's been awesome, and it's been I think we've learned more in the last couple of years than I ever thought. You know, we joke that we're both going to have business degrees by the time we're done with this, and the amount we've learned through this process is it's wild. And we've met some great people. The industry has been huge. The support from people and who we've met and who you know has been willing to give us advice and just being open to listening to these people that have been there and done that and tried and failed before, and it's been great. The industry's been extremely supportive.
Awesome. Very cool, guys. Well, it's a cool story, but it's not a hunting story, so we're going to keep going, right? So let's dive into those. Who wants to start first? Just sort of set the stage. I'm excited to hear some of these stories.
Ross, I'll turn the floor over to you. You go ahead. I already talked enough.
All right. So I'll tell a kind of a personal story about the first deer that I ever shot, which I've got mounted on the wall back here behind me. But you know, everybody remembers their first animal, you know, their first deer. Like I said, when I was 12, I had that opportunity at that small bull, and you know, I couldn't. It wasn't that I couldn't get myself to shoot it. It was with a cow, and they were separate, and I was afraid I was going to screw up. It was low light, just getting light. I was afraid I was going to screw up and shoot the cow and disappoint dad or whatever. So I ended up not doing anything and just let it walk off. And what's funny is Joe will tell you, I'm usually the guy that, you know, you want to enjoy the moment, you know, take your time. And I've never been that guy. Usually the first animal I see on opening day, I shoot. And last year, it was last year. Last year I had an opportunity, a small buck on opening day, and Joe talked me out of it, and I ended up going home empty-handed. But
Joe, how could you, man?
Yeah, but my first deer, it was the fall of 2001, and I was a junior in high school at the time, and the day before was opening day. Dad and I went up to a ridge outside of town. It took us about 2.5 hours to get there. And we'd been up in this area before, and it was actually the same area where when I was 12, I had an opportunity at that bull. It was the same mountain, same area. Mm-hmm. And we went up there, and we hunted all day and saw a few does. And towards the end of the day, we did see one decent 3x3 blacktail. And I ended up not getting an opportunity at him, chased him around for a little bit, never had a chance. And this was rifle season. And so I begged when I got home that day. That was on a Saturday. I begged to go out the next day on Sunday. And I had never hunted without Dad before, ever. And I was nervous to go without him, not because I was afraid I wasn't capable or getting lost or anything like that. I mean, I was 17 and, you know, I'd been hunting every single year since I was 12 with Dad carrying a gun. And I felt, you know, really good about it. But I'm kind of a sentimental guy. I kind of have a soft heart for stuff, and I was afraid that I was going to go out and I was going to shoot my first deer without Dad. And so part of me second guessed going up there, but I really, really wanted to go, and he couldn't go because they had a charity breakfast, pancake cooked breakfast that he and my mom were helping put on the next day.
Okay.
And so I finally convinced him to let me go up there. Dad had and I've got it now, but Dad had a 74 Chevy pickup that he let me have and drive up there for the day. And so I drove it up there with a buddy of mine, and we went up there, went to the exact same spot, got there in the dark, hiked up the ridge. I couldn't, everything looks different in the dark, and I couldn't find exactly where I wanted to be. So I kind of sat down and just parked it until it started to get light. My buddy had kind of peeled off up the ridge the other direction. So I was sitting there, waited till it got light a little bit. And, in those first hours of the daylight, your eyes kind of play tricks on you. So I just sat there for a little longer than I probably needed to, but I worked my way up the ridge after it got light and found a huge stump and sat right underneath that stump. And my whole plan is I knew that we'd seen deer in the area, we'd seen elk move through there, and so I thought I'm going to sit here for a little while. So I sat there for, I don't know, 2.5 hours probably, and finally I decided, okay, I was going to work my way up the rest of the ridge, crest it, and then work my way back up and just see what I could stumble across. And I got up and I stood. I don't know why I did it, but I crawled up on top of that stump. And this was a pretty tall, big tree that had been felled. And I stood up on top of that stump just for a few minutes because, everybody knows that spends any time sitting in the woods. When you get up and start moving, it feels like you disrupt everything. Everything sounds extremely loud. So I stood up. I don't know why, but I climbed up on this stump and I just stood there for a few minutes. And I bet I wasn't standing there for 3 minutes. And this forked horn steps out, and he's about 50 yards away from me, kind of quartered, walking towards me. So instantly, obviously, I can feel a lump in my throat, and I can't breathe, and I'm all excited. And I decide, okay, I'm gonna shoot this fork. And about the time that I pulled up the rifle, about the time I found him in my scope, I noticed another deer behind him, and I noticed it was a much bigger buck. So I swung over to him. He stopped broadside, and I don't even remember. I feel like I just put my gun where I thought it needed to go, and I remember reminding myself, squeeze the trigger, squeeze the trigger, squeeze the trigger, which is exactly what I did not do. As soon as the crosshairs went where it was supposed to go, I just was like, no, you got to get a round off. I just remember thinking, get a round off, and that was the dumbest thing in the world because Dad had taught me better than that. I felt like I was pretty good at the range, but I was so excited. I just jerked the trigger and shot, and instantly the deer dropped, and I jumped off. It wasn't 2 seconds. I didn't wait. I didn't do anything. I jumped off the stump. I yelled. I just gave a big holler, and I started running up the hill to him. And I was probably, I don't know, at this point, he was probably 40 yards away from me. I was probably 20 yards, maybe halfway to him, and he stood back up. And at that point, I froze, and I didn't know. I was like, what just happened? So I put another round in. I was shooting a Winchester Model 70. I put another round in, and I shot, and he fell again, and then he's kicking. So I put another round in, and I shot again. And then I just sat there, and I didn't know what to do. I was afraid to approach him. I was afraid to do anything. And so at this point, I don't feel like I can see. I've got total tunnel vision. But after he stopped kicking, I slowly walked up to him and got up there. And I couldn't figure out. I was looking at him, and one of my second follow-up shot, I believe, missed him. I don't know.
Okay.
And I could only find when I first was looking at him, I was trying to figure out where I hit him, and I could only find where one entry went in. And then when I grabbed his head and moved his head right at the main fork, and I'm looking at him now, right at the main fork, he was a 4x3, and on his left side where the main fork on the blacktail is on the 3-point side, there was a perfect bullet hole going straight through that main fork right at the main beam. And so that first round, what I think happened is that, and looking at the angle that the round went through, it had to have been my first shot. So my first shot hit him right in that web of that antler, and I think it just knocked him over and stunned him. And then obviously, as I was running towards him, he came to and stood up and shot him again. But I just couldn't believe it. And when I took the deer to a taxidermist later, he told me, he said, I can fix that for you. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, leave that. I mean, to me, that's, part of that story. But
that's amazing. So it didn't break the antler. It just went straight through.
It went I mean, if that round would have hit any direction, up, down, left, right, it would have broke it off. But it hit right in that web. I mean, it's almost center punched right through there. Perfect. And
that's so cool.
I mean, it's still strong. And I mean, it didn't break off or anything, but I stood over him, and then I thought, well, now what the hell am I going to do? And eventually about, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour later, my buddy that I'd went there with, I heard him start walking up the ridge to me, and And I told him, I called him. I said, Kyle, I said, get over here. I said, check out this 4x3. And he just called me out. He said, bullshit. He goes, it's got to be, it's a little forky. And when he got up there, I said, no, I said, it's a good one. And then we drug it down the hill and got it to the truck, cleaned it up, got it to the truck. And then I was so excited to get back down into town to show Dad. You know, my buddy wanted to stay up there and hunt a little bit, but I was like, no, we're leaving. We're done. So we drove down the hill and then I got I went to my house and asked my brother where my parents were, and they were at a local church putting on this pancake breakfast. And I instantly drove the truck down to there. It was only about 5 minutes from the house. And I mean, I don't know, I must have looked like a scene from whatever horror movie because I had blood all over me. It was the most inefficient gutting job in the world because it was the first year I'd ever done this on. And I busted into that pancake breakfast. That church hall was just lined with people eating. And the first thing I did is I saw my mom and I went up to her and I said, where's Dad? And she just looked me up and down and she said, he's over there. And so she led me to where he was. I went over to him and I was like, Dad, I got one. And part of me felt a little bit of guilt, you know, that he wasn't with me. And so that kind of, I still to this day, I don't know, I still have a weird feeling because I wanted Dad to be there for it, you know, and he wasn't obviously. But I went up to him and he's like asking me questions about it. He's like, we got to get out of here. Like, we can't, you're covered in blood and all these people are eating breakfast. So we went back to the house.
Oh, that's a great visual, man.
But that's awesome. I can only imagine what those people thought when they turned around and looked at me just covered in blood, thought I got run over by a car or whatever. We never hunted as kids. We never hunted in camo. We hunted in blue jeans and a red flannel jacket. It was kind of a rite of passage. Dad would buy this red flannel jacket for us when we were old enough. And you know, it was blue jeans and a red flannel jacket and a t-shirt. And if it was cold, he went down every year and he would buy us Army surplus, thick wool pants. I mean, stuff that you would never carry into the backcountry now because it's so heavy. But if it was cold, that's what you wore. And so I imagine it was kind of a confusing scene when I bust in the door covered in blood. But it was.
That's amazing. That's a great visual. I also love the sentimentality that you started the story with. My nephew, I've taken him hunting with me a few times in Texas, and I'm like, hey, do you want to start hunting? Like, do we want you? He's like, no, I want to wait until I'm out with my dad. He's like, I don't want to shoot anything until my dad's here. Problem being at this point, his dad doesn't want to go hunting, so I'm trying to convince him, like, hey, I know that's what you want, but let's get the ball rolling here. But it's beautiful, and I love that. Another thing is, and this is a story that we've had on the podcast before, we've had guys knock out deer from hitting them in the horns before, so like that's not crazy uncommon. Yours is cool because it didn't break the horn, but it reminded me of another story, and I wish I could remember which episode it was, but they actually thought the deer was dead. Brand new hunters took it, threw it in the back of like a station wagon. It woke up in the station wagon. When they were outside, all the doors were closed. The deer's in there by itself, just ripped the car to shit. So I love it when I hear of people doing that because you'd never think that it would happen. But apparently, you know, people just hit those antlers, close their eyes, pull the trigger, and knock those things out cold. So I love those stories, man. Can you send me a picture of like the hole in the antler? I'd love to see that sometime. Yeah,
I've got the deer. Like I said, it's mounted on the wall up here, and I can definitely send that to you. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Yeah. I love that you showed up to the pancake breakfast covered in blood. That's a great visual too.
Yeah, I ended up kind of recovering. I kind of told myself after that I was going to make sure that I was with my dad with my first bull, like because the elk scene was really what our family was about. And so I kind of, after that, I did have enough guilt to where I told myself I'm not shooting a bull unless Dad's around. And I did in I guess it was 2004 was the first bull I ever killed. And Dad was there for that. He was not sitting with me, but he was just up the ridge. And so he got to be there for that. And I cried and had my first shot of whiskey after that. And it was a whole deal, but it was, I wasn't going to let it happen twice.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great little, like anecdote there at the end. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, man. That was fun. Yeah. Joe, I think you're up, man. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So we said, I'll talk about this one sitting behind me. So this was my first successful solo backcountry archery blacktail.
Okay. Was it your first time? Was it your first attempt, or how many attempts were there before you finally knocked that down?
Couple seasons.
Okay.
So, I had shot deer with a rifle, but I hadn't killed one with a bow yet.
Okay.
So yeah, I there was an area right on the coast in Northern California. Pretty much, it's more like Oregon than what you would think of people that haven't been there. Just think of Oregon and that'll fill in the blanks. And ended up getting some little bit of intel from one of my friends that had hunted in that area before. He just gave me a couple tips of a couple drainages and stuff like that. And it's like, man, I wish I didn't have to work. He's like, I'd love to just go with you and show you up there. And I was like, no, it's all good. I was doing a lot of solo hunting. This was after Ross had moved to Oklahoma, and so I was really getting my feet wet with hunting big game. Like I said, I joined the Coast Guard at 18, and then spent the next several years just kind of all over the place, and didn't have really any opportunity to hunt. So when I finally kind of got settled in, and I wasn't moving once every 11 months, I was pretty determined to get out and really figure it out. And so a couple seasons of some, first season wasn't successful at all, and did some archery hunting out in Oklahoma and passed on a bunch of little deer because Ross was sending me pictures of these giants that I thought I was going to have my pick at. And yeah, all the pictures are in the dark, but I thought I was going to see one in the daylight. So yeah, I ended up packing up into this spot on the coast, and it's right on the beach. So you're hiking miles on the beach. I make camp and end up wake up super early in the morning and shoot up the hillside. And I spent all day just still hunting through this big timber, really, really steep country, basically hunted, from sea level up to about 900 feet and then back down and then back up. And I was basically just up and down looking for sign. And I spent probably 5 hours before I found any fresh deer sign. And an hour after that, I bumped this small forked horn, and I was like, all right, well, at least I'm finding deer now. And it was getting close to sunset. So I'd hunted all day and I bumped one buck, and ended up finding some really fresh sign. And then, as soon as I went down over the hill, I caught an eye of this buck, and I had the wind in my face and everything. And I didn't think he saw me. I think he was just naturally moving. Okay. And so I knew he didn't see me because he didn't look at me. And it was pretty windy, so I don't think he heard me. And so my thought was, well, I'm going to run back up the hill and try to cut him off. I mean, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of darted back up the hill, and I was waiting, and I was like, man, I was so mad because I had this camera out, and I was like trying to film. I was like, this stupid camera's got to go away. So I like put the camera away, and like, dang it, man, I was so bummed because I spent literally all day, running around, didn't find anything. And so I ended up I was going to just stick to my plan. I was going to hunt these kind of open meadows on the way back. I had I think a little over 2 miles to get back to my camp, and I was hoping to get there right around sunset or right in the dark, and because it was all good hunting pretty much all the way back to camp. And I was going to hunt the lower elevation back. And I went over the hill, and I literally caught him bedding down, the same buck. So he must have just been moving from one bed to the other. And as soon as I went back down over the hill, I caught him just turning around and bedding down. And I immediately sat down, and I watched him in the bushes. I think he was 16 yards away, and it was pretty thick.
Oh, no way. That's so close.
And we have good wind. The wind was basically quartering a little bit, but pretty much head on, and he's off to my left, and just sitting there watching him with my binos. And I pulled my little camcorder back out, and I'm like zooming in on him. I was like, no one's going to believe me. I was like, I actually found one, a good mature blacktail up here. And so I was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to kill this thing. I'm going to sit here forever. The wind's going to swirl and he's going to blow out. And I was all pessimistic about it for sure. And I'm sitting there, I'm like crazy because I'm just so excited that, I have a potential opportunity. But in my mind, I was like, there's no way where this works out in my favor. And I sat there for, must have been at least an hour, and I kept just sitting there just looking at him with my binoculars, and I was like, man, he's got to get up eventually. So my plan was just sit there till I couldn't see him anymore, and that's that. And literally the last, I don't know, it was probably right around sunset. This smaller buck, I think it was the buck that I had jumped earlier, ends up walking in front of me 10 yards, gives me an opportunity. and I know he's still in there, so I let him go. I'm like, nope. I was like, it's him.
Ballsy. Okay.
Especially because I haven't shot one with the bow yet, and I was like, that's, I got this little 2-3-year-old deer in front of me, and I can shoot him, but nope. I let him walk, and not even, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes. I don't remember how much time, but it's just a few minutes later. Here he comes through the bushes, like getting up, walking, following that young buck out, same trail right below me, 10 yards. And so I can't believe it, first of all.
Yeah.
Sitting there looking, I'm like, holy cow, and he's bigger than I thought he was. So I was like, I draw back on him, and there's this little Doug fir sapling in front of me, and I don't even know, it just kind of muscle memory took over from there, and I let one rip, and rookie bow hunter mistake. My arrow hit one of the saplings in front of me. I didn't know it at the time, but the arrow went right into his spine because he dropped so fast. As soon as I let go, boom, he disappeared. And it's really steep. He tumbled. I heard him tumbling down the hill. So I was like, oh, perfect shot.
Yeah, okay.
So he tumbled down the hill, instantly disappeared, and probably 80 to 100 yards down, and then fell off this like 10-foot embankment into the creek bed in the bottom. And it's all poison, all Doug fir, lots, it's pretty thick in there, very steep. And so I give it a few minutes, and another rookie move. I just said, screw it. I'm going to go see what in my mind, I was like, he's dead. He just fell down the freaking mountain. So yeah. I gather myself a little bit, and then make my way down the hill there. And I poke my head over 15 yards or so, and I can see him down in the creek bed, kind of nodding his head. And I felt really bad. I was like, dang it, he's not dead. And that's when I saw the blood on his spine. And I'm like, all right, well, I did that. So I just grabbed another arrow, and I just put it right where it's supposed to be. And I watched him die, and I felt really bad.
Yeah. Well, hey, the rookie thing was the right thing in that case, right? Like by not waiting, he suffered less. You got down there quicker, and you were able to put an end to it because, a seasoned hunter may have sat there for 2 hours and just let him suffer. So good on you.
Because he was trying. Once he saw me, he was trying to get up, and he couldn't. Mm-hmm. So that's when I was like, the only thing to do is put another arrow in him, and did that. And not even, a minute later, he was dead in the creek. And I was in like shock. I was in disbelief. I was like, carrying this damn bow around a lot, and finally got an opportunity, and it didn't go exactly how I had planned it in my head. Got down there and just went to work, started quartering him up. And I was worried that's a very, very densely populated area for mountain lions. And I'm in there solo, and I'm breaking this deer down in a creek bed with big hill, small cliffs on both sides of me. I'm like, I am literally sitting on a pile of bait right now. And I was a little nervous, so I couldn't wait to get out of there. And got them all quartered up, got all the meat shoved in some bags, threw it all in my pack, and caped them out and shoved it all on there. And man, I was just, on a very high at that point. Hiking there, and once I broke out of that really thick, dense forest and I popped out on the coast again, I just felt like I could breathe again. It felt so freaking good. Funny water story though.
Ooh, I see what you did there. Okay.
Well, yeah, I actually have a story out loud for. I don't even know when the last time I told the story was, but and I forgot about this. I made it down to the bottom, and I hit another creek. I was out of water, and my filter was so far buried in my pack that I did not want to take all the meat out and pull out the filter. I was like, I've got 1.5 miles to make it to my camp. I'm gonna get there. Yeah, I didn't really dehydrated. I was packing out this deer, and it was a good size for a blacktail, a big bodied deer. And I remember seeing some backpackers because there was a trail down there, and they backpack on it. And I asked them if they had any extra water, and they're like, "No, sorry." And I was like, "All right." So I just kept, and they were probably all scared as shit. This guy comes out of the woods in the dark, all with a dead deer on him, carrying a bow, asking for water. It's like probably scared him a little bit.
The backpackers, were they camped or were they? Were they hiking in the dark? Because backpackers don't always hike in the dark. That's not super common.
They were camped. So I walked up on and I asked them if they had any extra.
I bet that was scary as hell.
Yeah. I had a headlamp on. I was, scared that I'd get attacked I just dragging around a freaking decoy on my back in the dark. So I ended up taking out this little blow up lantern and I put it on my back. So it was like shining backwards. I don't know. In my mind, I was like, I'll confuse the cats. They don't know where I am. Probably all I did was like, hey, check this out, come attack it. So yeah, I was like, all right, whatever. I'll make it there. And so I ended up making it back to my camp, just before midnight or 11 something. And there was people there too. I was camped further back in the creek, but there was another set of backpackers because they backpack on the beach there. They don't go up the hills, but on the beach. And I walked through and they're like, yeah, we were thinking about calling the ranger because we saw your camp back there and we haven't seen you. And I remember he was like, oh, cool, you shot a deer? I was like, yeah. And at least he was like trying to make conversation. I could tell they were kind of nervous. Dude covered in walking up with a bow.
Yeah.
I remember I was just so happy. I offered him some meat. I was like, you want some? He's like, oh, venison's so good. And I was like, you want some? He's like, oh, no, I'm okay. And
he was bluffing. He didn't think venison was that good. Otherwise, there's no way you turn down that fresh backstrap, because that's what you're probably cutting up.
They had a fire going too. Like literally could have just busted out, put some seasoning on. No seasoning, who cares? Whatever, roasted on the fire. But yeah, so I got back to camp. And then my main goal was just hydrate. So I finally dug all my stuff out, filled up all my water, and sat there for 20 minutes. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting out of here. I was like, I'm not staying the night here. I'm going to hike back to my... So I packed up all of my stuff. And maybe, I kind of felt a little bad too because I was about to hang a bunch of meat in the trees behind these people. And I was like, they're probably going to be super nervous because they literally have a bunch of meat sitting 20 yards behind.
Yeah.
Their bear canisters were like 200 yards down the beach. And I was like, what the hell are these? And then I find the camp. I was like, is that your guys' bear canisters over there? They're like, yeah. So you probably don't need to put them that far away. So that was the other thing. Obviously, they're scared of bears. So I ended up just packing everything up and hiked down the beach. And I remember walking on sand for the next couple miles with all that weight on my back. And that was probably more difficult than any hill I've ever gone up or down. Walking on flat ground. My footwear wasn't probably the best then. My pack wasn't the best. I probably wasn't in as good of shape either. I wasn't like training specifically for that. And man, that was really tough. I made it back to the truck and like I was still severely dehydrated. And
I bet.
It was 1:30 in the morning. And didn't care.
How many miles from camp to the truck, roughly?
Probably around 2.
About 2, okay. And was it all sand the whole way, or was it a mixture? Because I know those Oregon beaches, you said, think of Oregon, they're very rocky, not that much sand. But this was pretty sandy?
Yeah, it's all sand, and then basically the biggest is like pea gravel.
Okay.
All dry, very, very, very difficult to walk on, for sure.
Yeah. I played a lot of beach volleyball. I don't know if I've ever shared that on the podcast, but like I went to college for volleyball, played a little bit of pro beach volleyball, just like one tournament. I'm not that good. But I know how hard it is to move around in sand. And so like when you started this, said you packed in from the sand, and I knew you were going to harvest something. I wanted to ask about that pack out because I was like, this is probably going to be brutal. I can't believe you did it that same night. I would have passed out as soon as I got to my tent.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I was just so excited. I was still riding the high of like finally killing something with my bow. And I don't know. In hindsight, like knowing what I know now, like I wouldn't have packed down hell. I would have been like, oh yeah, backstrap and go make some new friends and eat some food out in the morning. But no, I don't know why. I just decided to pack out that night. And I remember calling my buddy and that gave me some pointers in there, and he was so jacked. He's like, what? He's like, you killed something? He's all, that was quick. He's like, where are you? He's just like super excited, and he lived out there too. So his house was only 5 minutes from there, and
awesome.
Yeah, literally 5 minutes, and he's like, come to the house. He's like, I got the bed set up for you and everything. He's like, I'll have my wife put some stuff together for you, and it was like all this thing, and he was just so stoked. Like seeing his excitement for me was like, damn, I guess maybe it is a better deer than I thought it was. And
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's super cool. I also love it when hunters run into non-hunters in the woods. I think that is just such a fun. I've heard plenty of stories where guys do that, and they're always just like awkward interactions, and I love them.
Every bit of it.
I think it's important for your listeners when they're visualizing Joe doing this too. So I grew up, like I told you, I grew up my entire life hunting, wearing jeans and a red flannel. And when Joe and I met in, I don't know, was it
13.
2013, I guess, when we were stationed together at Bodega Bay in Northern California there. And, we got to talking about fishing and hunting and all this stuff. And Joe had basically confessed to me that he hadn't really done a whole lot of hunting. And I was like, we got to do some hunting together. And, so Joe and I quickly became, fast friends with all of this. But I'll never forget that, I at that point I'd started to invest in some better gear. But when you're picturing Joe on his first couple of years of hunting, in his first year, I think before he went, and he can correct me if I'm wrong here, but before he went out on maybe his first hunt, he shows up and he has every single piece of Sitka gear you can imagine, all brand new, tags on, packs, and I went home to my wife and I said, I'm worried about Joe. Like, he's an E4 at this point. I'm an E5. He's an E4 at this point. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this guy just dropped like $4,000 on hunting gear. And she's like, well, you said he likes to hunt. And I said, yeah, but I don't think he's really ever hunted that much. Like, we're still kind of in the get to know each other phase. We work together, but we haven't done a lot of stuff together. And I'm like, Jen, I was like, I'm a little bit jealous. Like, this guy's got better stuff than I've ever even thought about buying. And he's got my Christmas list, and he's never done any of this stuff hardly before. And Joe went all in when he decided he was gonna really dive into this. It was like, all in. Here's my card, and I was like, dude, he got everything.
That's amazing.
First season was Realtree Max 1 XT. That was my first season. Rock that, and then. Then I was like, all right, this is, I think, what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I hunted varmints growing up. I shot upland birds, off season, because I played football my entire all through middle school and high school. So I was always during deer season. And then my priorities were completely whack, like on my weekends and stuff. So,
yeah.
And my dad being, an opportunist hunter for when we were hungry. It wasn't part of what we did. We fished a lot spent a lot of time on the river and the lake, steelhead, and just fishing freshwater and ocean stuff, salmon and bottom fish in northern. So it wasn't until, I could buy my own guns and do all that stuff that I was just like, screw it. So like Rob, on my early years of learning big game hunting, it was a lot of trial and error. I didn't have any mentors, so when Ross had moved, I was calling him a lot. Man,
okay,
mentor, and I was like, man, I was just super frustrated trying to figure things out, and I like to think that I just get lucky now,
Yeah.
I did spend my first season with the Realtree Max 1 XT. I remember that. It was a good camo, good clothes. Tried to stay away from the.
I had a similar path, Joe, man. My first, actually probably 2 seasons, I had this camo. I don't even know what it was. I went with my father-in-law to buy it, but then I found out like year 3 that my friends, my hunting buddies, were making fun of me because they said I was wearing MC Hammer pants, like just huge baggy pants. And I was like, I'm going to switch. So I think I bought, I still have it in my closet. I don't even know what it is, but something a little bit more form-fitting. Turns out that stuff wasn't waterproof, and I was hunting in Washington. So like I had the coldest season I've ever had in my life. So like, the mockery and then the misery, I ended up buying myself piecemeal it together. I ended up with a bunch of different pieces of Sitka as well. So you get there. It's when you know it's what you're supposed to be doing, like you said, you're like, this is my personality now. I'm a hunter. It's okay to invest a little bit. Ross, quick giving the guy grief. All right.
Yeah.
No, I'm kind of a penny pincher, and so I would, and I've got a lot of good stuff now, but for a long time I would piece it together. I'd buy a pair of Sitka pants, but then everything I'm wearing up top is different, or I'd buy the one thing and just kind of piece it together. And I always joked I'm never going to get sponsored by anybody because I'm wearing 5 different brands of stuff. But but it was pretty funny when I saw Joe. I'm like, holy cow! Like,
hey, you know what? 21, 22-year-old E4s buy a brand new Camaro. I invested $20,000 into hunting gear.
Yep.
I mean,
there we go.
Yep.
That's funny. Well, guys, this was a ton of fun. I want to just ask real quick. I want to be respectful of your time, Joe, because I know that you said you have a limited time. Do we want to just let the people know where they can find you, or do you guys want to share some more stories? Your call. we can always have you back if you have more to share in the future. But I don't want to take you away from other business today.
No, I'm good. I could sit and talk hunting stories forever. I've got 9 million of them, but yeah, if anybody wants to check out our products, we've worked really, really hard to bring something to the market that we really feel like changes the experience of getting water. Joe and I have, talked a lot that, with backcountry hunting or, really any hunting, the hunting market has always been forced to use what the backpacking and hiking world had for water. I mean, that's really what, nobody's really designed a product around for hunting anyway, around the hunter. And so we really tried to design something that, through our experience, we live the same lifestyle that our customers do, right? And so we really tried to design a product that solved a lot of problems. That first day we drew this thing up, we went and made a list of all the things we didn't like and really tried to build a system that makes the experience of getting your water, whether you're drinking it or whether you're refilling it or filtering it, a lot more user-friendly to the people that live this lifestyle and do this. And so that's what we've tried to create. And we've got our website's just drifterhydration.com. The email address is info@drifterhydration.com. And like I said at the beginning of this, anytime you send an email or a question, it's always Joe or I that answers it on the email or Instagram or whatever. So
awesome. Yeah, I'll say that I've got they're not grand stories, but I can think of at least 3 different times where my water system either irritated me, let me down, whatever it may be, whether it was like a third rifle hunt in Colorado where my tube froze and all of a sudden I have no water. Like I just can't get access to it, which was a miserable hunt, to where I have way too much. And it's, my pack, I'm like, oh, my pack's nice and light. And then I throw my water in there and I'm like, oh, I just tripled the weight of my pack. Like there's so many different ways it can go wrong, and it always adds, it provides more stories for me. Like people having bad water, they're going to keep coming on the podcast and telling about how this horrible experience they had. Yeah. But what you guys are doing makes sense. And I'll vouch for it. So
the only thing I don't like about our system is it's removed my excuse. Cause usually I can't tell any lot. Usually I'm following Joe up the mountain cause Joe's like a mountain goat. And, we joke that I'm the fat old man of the group and half the time I can't keep up with him, but, or most of the time. And he used to always just tell me it was because I'm not drinking enough water. I'm not drinking enough water. So we joke that we created this system, or Joe created this system so that he can force me to drink more water just so I can keep up with him. So now I guess I lost my excuse that I'm not drinking enough water to keep up with him. So I'm going to have to come up with something else, I guess.
Yeah, we all have that Billy Goat friend. It's just like trying not to slow them down as best you can. That's all you can do.
But they're good when you shoot something because usually they can carry a little bit more weight.
Yep, absolutely. Well, guys, this was a ton of fun. Joe, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up? Otherwise, guys, thank you so much. And we'll have you back on anytime to share more stories.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having us on, Michael. It was a cool setup you got going on.
Perfect. And I will put links to everything that you guys mentioned in the show notes. Guys, please check them out. American made. The owners are right here. It's just you two, right? No secretaries, no nothing else. Just you guys slaving away. So, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate your stories. I appreciate your time. And to the listeners, make sure you check out Drifter Hydration.
Thanks,
Stop
guys.
that.